This past weekend, Kevin Feige revealed not only his plans for phases 4 and 5 of the MCU, but also the big events of phase 6. So today we're going to stop and rank all 17 projects officially announced during the Hall H panel from the worst to the best based on my anticipation. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the upcoming MCU projects based off your anticipation, or just let me know which ones are you most excited about and which ones are you not interested in at all. With that said, let's get started. In last place, Agatha, Coven of Chaos. Now, over the last few months, I've really started to feel like the MCU is prioritizing quantity over quality, and that's almost certainly mandated by Disney, who needs content for their streaming service. But because they're putting out so much content, they're just spreading themselves too thin, and the quality overall is dipping. And projects like this are just a prime example of them throwing out so much content that just doesn't need to be made. Agatha is a perfectly fine side character, but no one was asking her to get her own show, and now that's what's going to happen, and that means Kevin Feige is going to have to pull his time away from more important projects to give this project a little bit of oversight. This means VFX shops are going to be overworked even a little bit more, trying to give Agatha her witch powers, and that time isn't going to other projects that are more important, more interesting. And so this is one that I don't know why they're doing it. The only reason I would watch this is if the trailer's incredible, and the simple fact that I watch everything that the MCU puts out because this is what I do for a living. But this isn't something that anything inherently just interests me or that I'm pulled towards, and I'm frustrated that the MCU is wasting their time on a project like this. Number 16, The Marvels. And this is one that maybe when I see a trailer, I could get more excited about it, but just based off the raw ingredients and basic premise, I'm not particularly drawn towards it. Captain Marvel, definitely not one of my favorite MCU films, and a big part of that is because the Captain Marvel character herself hasn't been particularly appealing to me up to this point in time, so more time with her doesn't draw me in all that much. I actually would be interested in the season 2 of Miss Marvel if she spends her time in Jersey being a local hero in her community. I'd be more interested in that than I am in her showing up in a movie with Captain Marvel. And then spinning off our Rambeau into this film, I'm interested in seeing that because I'd like to see more of that character, but the specific mixture of the three of them together doesn't specifically interest me because we've never seen them interact before to know if they have any chemistry to make that a good team up. Likewise, the director for this project did last year's Candyman, and I didn't really like the movie. It's shot really well, and so potentially she's just put on a project that I didn't really care for, and she could win me over with this film. But just based off the raw ingredients, because the director's last film wasn't something I particularly enjoyed, I haven't seen this group of people together before, and Captain Marvel herself is one of the least likable heroes in the MCU. It just doesn't have much interest for me at the moment. Number 15, SheHulk Attorney at Law. This is another one of these projects where I'm not really sure what they're trying to do with this project. It's one that feels like a strange use of resources to do a legal comedy in the MCU that's also like cameo palooza. The first trailer was quite bad. The CGI was off-putting at times, and then the humor made it just feel like it was Ally McBeal in the MCU, where people were like, nice butt, your butt looks great today. Dating in your 30s is rough. You're like, what are we doing with this MCU project? Second trailer, I think, was quite a bit better, the one that debuted just a few days ago, and I think it captured the energy, the dynamic that they were going for, and it felt more a piece of the MCU, but it still felt like, why are we doing this? Why is this something that you feel like is an important, essential piece of the MCU? And it also felt like they were just throwing in all these cameos to just draw your attention. Like, oh, wow, I love Daredevil, and he's going to be in this? Wow, Mark Ruffalo, he's going to be in this quite a bit. Wong's in this? Incredible Hulk reference? Wow. And so it was trying to do all the superficial stuff to draw you in rather than trying to sell you on the actual premise of the show. Other one in here that doesn't interest me, makes me a little bit nervous about it, is the lead writer for it. His claim to fame is working on Rick and Morty, which I'm not particularly familiar with Rick and Morty. I just know that it's quite different from the MCU, in which case I just look at the project and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's one that I will watch because I watch everything in the MCU, but I probably wouldn't have checked it out otherwise. Next up, Ironheart. And to be honest, I'm not particularly familiar with the Ironheart character, therefore my knowledge is based off quick reading of Wikipedia pages about the character, and essentially it's the sort of idea of this girl that creates her own Iron Man-esque suit. The character is going to appear in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. You can actually see her in a few shots in the trailer working on her suit, talking with Shuri, and so there's a few things in there that, like, anytime someone's in like an Iron Man-esque suit, that's kind of fun, but in general, it's frustrating to me that through phases 4 and 5, they're doing a female version of each of the male original Avengers in some fashion. And I understand they're wildly different characters, but there's a character inspired by Tony Stark. There's She-Hulk. There's Kate Bishop. We already did Mighty Thor. So we're doing a female version of each of them, and at a certain point in time, that's just lazy. Like, wanting to adapt a character is one thing, but when you take every single one of the male characters and do a female version in the next couple of phases, it's a very lazy bag of tricks. And so there's a little bit of that here of like, okay, another one of these projects where it just feels like you needed content, and so you're doing another female version of the male character. Since I'm not particularly familiar with them, there's not much here to kind of draw me in. And then kind of looking at who is the showrunner for it. It's someone that worked on a bunch of television. The big credit that stood out to me was Snowpiercer, show I haven't watched. So there's just nothing here that's causing me to push this one higher up on the list yet. Number 13, Captain America: New World Order. And this one is so frustrating that I have to have it pretty low on the list, because if they'd announced this movie right after Endgame, before Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this would probably be like 4 or 5 spots higher up on the list. I'd be significantly more excited for the project. But we got 3 big problems here. First one, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I thought was a big, gigantic misfire, and it really kind of dampened my excitement for this new Captain America. Second problem follows directly from that. The lead writer for this film is the guy that was the showrunner for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I didn't think he did a good job developing the story for that show, so it's tougher to be excited for him developing this movie. Third knock against it is the director is the guy that directed Cloverfield Paradox, which is not a good movie. I've heard from someone else that his follow-up to it was much better and a really good film, but I haven't seen it, so I can't use that to help up my excitement level here. So all I know is that I would have been very, very excited for Sam Wilson to pick up the shield, be Captain America 3 years ago after Endgame. But with what we've seen them do with the character since then, the writer they brought on and the director they brought on board dampened my excitement for something that I would otherwise be like, oh, cool, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Then we have Echo, and this one's tricky for me because I have all kinds of mixed feelings about this project. If you just base my excitement based off, hey, we're going to spin off Echo into our own show, I'd be like, why? This would be kind of in that Agatha category of like, why are we taking C-list character, giving them their own show, pulling resources away from other projects, eating up Kevin Feige's time, and putting emphasis on a character that the general public isn't familiar with. That would be my gut reaction to it. And the character on Hawkeye was perfectly fine as a side character, and I'd be totally fine if this character had a more of a presence in other things. But their own spinoff, I didn't see Echo and go, man, lead character right there. Can't wait to go off an adventure with just Echo. Just wasn't that type of character for me. But the thing that draws you in a little bit more is that Echo as a character is very closely associated with Kingpin. Even in Hawkeye, that was the big reveals, is this character's ties to Kingpin. And so then we got Vincent D'Onofrio returning as Kingpin in this show in a prominent role. Tied to that also, Charlie Cox, Daredevil's going to be in this show. So then I'm excited about this show, not so much because of the lead character, but because of all these side characters from other things that I'm excited about. So it's like borrowed excitement from something else. Other thing that kind of caught my attention in here, the showrunner worked heavily on Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad spinoff that is just as well written as Breaking Bad. I love Better Call Saul just as much as I love Breaking Bad. I honestly don't know which show I prefer more. And so when you get one of the people who's very much a part of the writing team for Better Call Saul joining your show, that's a writer, that's a creative team that gets me pretty excited about what you're doing, even though Echo as a character, on paper, don't really know who this is, C-list, not that interesting. Writer, oh, that's interesting. These side characters, pretty interesting. And then there's rumors about potentially who they're trying to track down in the season that might tie into the plot a little bit more. Also, I don't want to go into rumors, that's not what I do on my channel, but there's a rumor that gets me even more excited about something that could be very exciting about this show. But the lead character themselves, not that interesting to me. Number 11, Loki Season 2. And this is one where I'm once again kind of conflicted on it because I enjoyed the ride of Season 1 of Loki, and then it kind of created the situation where we get the multiverse, which was a fun little event at the time, but it's also one that now we're a year removed. I'm not like, man, I can't wait for more of that. I mean, I certainly want to see if Mobius ever gets to ride that jet ski that he's so excited to ride that we didn't get to see in Season 1. And if I get an idea of how it ties into everything with Kang and this multiverse saga, I could get more excited about it. But I think part of the problem is that Loki had all this big gigantic stuff happen that smashes the multiverse, creates the scenario, and then a year has passed, we've had multiple multiverse projects, but none of them have really in any way directly tied back to Loki. And so it feels like its own kind of detached thing. And I've had my criticisms of Phase 4 and it feels unfocused, and that's kind of what I'm referring to, of like, we've had all these different multiverse projects that seem to have, each one of them has their own set of rules, they don't really tie together. And so it gets frustrating at a certain point in time. And so when I see a trailer for Loki, maybe when I see when it's going, my excitement could raise. But at this moment, it's very tricky for me to know how to feel about it in light of where the multiverse is at and what I feel about last year's season of the show. But I enjoyed the season, so I guess I'd like to see more. I just want to know what they're going to do, some sort of idea what this will look like. Even the nature of the plot of the first season, I don't know how it translates in light of everything that's taken place. What's next? I just don't see it. It felt like a standalone miniseries that launched something, not an ongoing series. So as we move into the top 10, things start getting really complicated because some of these are third movies and trilogies where we know the cast, we know the writer, we know the director. Some of these are projects where we don't even know the writer and director or the cast. We just know the concept. Others, we know we're bringing something back, but we only know loose details. So my feelings on most of these are all over the place for very different reasons. Some of them are very high because we don't even know much about them. Others are lower than you might expect because we know things about them. So it gets very interesting at this point in time. And I kind of just want to be able to say tied for the top 10 and just move on, but I can't. So here's my best guess at my top 10. Kicking off our top 10 will be Secret Invasion. And this is one where, based off the basic concept, I'm very interested in this one. The idea of Skrulls invading the Earth, shapeshifters, reminds me of all these paranoia alien invasion films of the past. Doing that in the MCU with it being Nick Fury centric, that sounds like a lot of fun. Like, I would be totally down for that. And Nick Fury and Talos were some of the standouts in Captain Marvel. So there's just like a bunch of things about this one that it's like, oh, that sounds really cool. And then the lead writer is from Mr. Robot, which is a highly acclaimed show from several years back. The people that watched it really loved it. Hold up on this one, 6 episodes. That now for me is a big red flag. Anytime one of these Disney Plus shows is 6 episodes, I get nervous because that has not seemed to have worked well for them in general. It's the wrong compromise between a 2-hour movie and a 10-hour TV series. It just feels like a movie that's bloated and underdeveloped as a TV series. So that's the biggest holdup, honestly, for me. This one could have gone up a few spots, but 6 episodes, red flag, held it back a bit. Number 9, Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And this is another one where I wish I could have it higher up on the list. But because of the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman, I just feel like they're dealt such a bad hand. It's tough for me to be fully excited for this film until I really understand what they're doing. They put out the trailer a few days ago, and the trailer as a thing in and of itself, I thought was very well done in that it had the right reverent, somber tone that, while obviously not overtly referencing the death of Chadwick Boseman, it's built into the trailer itself, that loss that occurred, and you feel that. And so it gives you a lot of images without giving away the plot, without giving context to what you're seeing, teasing a bunch of things, this grand scale. And the problem, though, for me, is that I still have the question that I had 2 years ago when we learned that he had passed, which was, I don't know what they're doing with Black Panther. It's a sequel to Black Panther. Black Panther's in the title. We get the one shot of the hand, but we don't know who Black Panther is. And I had some people in the comments just like, this is the worst reaction ever. You just want the whole trailer given away. You want the whole movie given away in the trailer. That's what's ruling trailers. It's just a teaser. What more could you want? Like, let's be reasonable here. The lead actor died, and they're not recasting him. So this is at the core of what the film is, the question that I want an answer to. And they've played coy for 2 years. And now they're using the marketing to build intrigue around their project. Who is Black Panther? Who is going to take over? To raise questions. And you can debate the morality of using the mystery of who's replacing the person that passed away as a way to sell more tickets and build intrigue and get people to talk about your film. But I think at the end of the day, it's an entirely fair question for people to be like, man, I just don't know about this project because I just need to know what it is to have my excitement. I need to know what the direction they're taking it, because he's the title character. He's the hero. That truly matters. You can't just, it doesn't matter who's in the suit. Someone's in the suit, so we're cool. No, like if you're watching a Batman movie, Bruce Wayne is Batman, and you say, it doesn't matter who's in the suit. Someone's in the suit. No, I need to know who's in the suit to be excited about the film. And that's still the mystery out there. They were dealt a terrible hand. They cut a trailer that absolutely tugs at your heartstrings, absolutely makes you feel and reminds you of the true life tragic passing. But it doesn't resolve the question of the central to it of what are they actually doing to move forward. I still don't know. And so I can't have this one as one that it's like top tier excitement level. Then we have Thunderbolts, the MCU's version of the Suicide Squad or the Dirty Dozen. And I'm totally down for a less heroic team-up movie where people aren't quite as altruistic and need a little bit more poking and prodding to do the right thing. And I don't know if that's exactly the way they'll go with it, but the idea of something like this in the MCU, cool. I'm totally down for it. And, I need to know who's going to be a part of the team to get fully excited about it. Part of why this one isn't quite I might have had this one a little bit higher up on the list, but looking at the director, he's worked on a bunch of music videos and a couple of acclaimed indie films, but he doesn't have something that's a more obvious one-to-one comparison to get excited for as a director for a project like this. The writer has been a part of the MCU writing team for quite a while, worked on Ragnarok, Black Widow, script doctoring on Infinity War and Endgame. So he knows how to work within the Kevin Feige system. So there's a lot of things here to get excited about. Not quite top tier excitement, but pretty excited about this one and would like to hear a little bit more about it. Number 7, Blade. Now, this is a project when they first announced it 3 years ago or whatever, I was very excited that we're finally getting Blade in the MCU because I am someone that was there in theaters back in 1998 when the original Blade came out. Saw all 3 of the Blade films in the theater. Even Blade Trinity, I have a lot of fun with it. So he's a cool character that I love that we're getting in the MCU. And I think there's just a little bit of 3 years have passed with very limited updates on what's taking place. And so I think that perhaps has dampened a little bit of my excitement for it. Likewise, when you're not quite sure what Blade looks like in the MCU, the old films were R-rated. That was part of the fun. Wesley Snipes is an actual martial artist. And that first movie came out right as Hong Kong influenced martial arts choreography was making its way into Hollywood. And so you had really slick choreography combined with, bloody vampires dying and stuff like that. Sequels done by Guillermo del Toro, directed Blade 2. And so there's just a certain amount of about style to those films, and they got some great talent at just the right time to do some cool things. And so when I look at this project, they got the director of Mogul Mowgli. I haven't seen the movie, critically acclaimed, but indie film. It's not a one-to-one comparison to be able to go, oh, I get how he's going to do Blade awesome. And then the screenwriter has worked on a number of TV shows, but nothing that popped out as like, oh, that's a highly acclaimed writer right there. And that's where I get a little bit nervous, that I need to see a little bit more, hear a little bit more, because some of the things that make me so excited about Blade, I don't see immediately, and that's what MCU would be able to do. And also an MCU-ified Blade that's PG-13, that's quipping a little bit too much in the Disney-ified way, doesn't interest me that much. So some of that honeymoon phase of like, wow, we're getting Blade, and you went, wait, what will Blade look like in this version of the MCU? Dampened some of that excitement. And just because I'm not familiar with this director, writer, some of that other stuff, I'm super excited to see Blade, but not where I was 3 years ago. Number 6, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantamania. And this is a movie that places in the top third of this list essentially because it's pretty easy to know what to expect from it. We've seen Ant-Man previously in the MCU in 2 Ant-Man films, Civil War and Endgame. So you know Paul Rudd is incredibly likable, charming in the role. We got the director returning, so you know essentially the type of vibe the movie will have. And I've enjoyed the previous 2 Ant-Man films. They're not aiming to be top-tier films. They're aiming to be kind of easily accessible, lightweight, unassuming little adventures. And I'm totally fine with some of the MCU films not having gargantuan stakes and just being simple stories. Other thing that's fascinating about this one is that this is our introduction to Kang. We got a variant of him in the Loki season 1 finale, but we haven't seen Kang the Conqueror, who's going to be this big bad of the multiverse saga. So all of a sudden, this Ant-Man film does have big, gigantic stakes. It does tie into this saga in a much bigger way than the previous Ant-Man films have tended to do. So that I just know what to expect on an enjoyment level, the comedy, the cast, things like that. And then you throw Kang into the mix, and it just kind of goes, okay, it's easy for me to have an idea of what an Ant-Man film is that's going to be really important for the MCU, and we're going to get to see Kang and what this is really going to be like. It's going to answer a lot of questions, tease a lot of things for the future, so it makes it into the top 30. In 5th place, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, this is a movie that I have very interesting feelings about because original Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my favorite MCU films, one of those pleasant surprises in the entire MCU for me. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, one of my hottest takes on my channel, they've gotten the most crap for, most angry comments over. I think that's like the most disappointing film for me in the MCU is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 because I was so excited to go see it and then didn't really like it. Every time I rewatch it, I like it even less. And every time we try and rewatch it, my wife gets mad at me because she likes it even less than I do. And it's just a movie that, on plot reasons, tone reasons, doesn't work for me. There's good things in there, but for me, it doesn't work on the whole. But at the same time, it just feels like James Gunn took some risks that didn't pay off for me, but it didn't sour my opinion of James Gunn as a writer-director. I liked The Suicide Squad, liked Peacemaker, and so I'm still excited to see what he's going to do, and I want to see more of these characters. I loved what they did with the Guardians in Infinity War, and so more of the Guardians has me excited. I haven't seen the footage they showed in Hall H. Apparently people were crying. Apparently it's very emotional. All of that gets me excited to check this one out. So despite my issues with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, very excited to check out Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And it's a movie that, because it had such a bizarre history with James Gunn being fired, everyone on the casting crew saying we're only doing this movie if James Gunn does it. He's rehired later, but by then he'd already signed on with DC, so the movie got delayed. All of that just increases my intrigue, like, what's this thing gonna be? So, can't wait to check this one out and see, is it more Guardians 1 or is it more Guardians 2? Or does it surpass Guardians 1 and just entertain while being heartfelt on an even bigger level than the original Guardians? In 4th place is Daredevil, Born Again. And if you didn't know this, Daredevil was probably my favorite TV show of the last decade. I loved all 3 seasons of Daredevil and was just crushed when they canceled the show out of nowhere. Like season 3 drops, and they didn't even market season 3 all that much. Drops, it's awesome, and then the show's canceled out of the blue. And so when rumors started to circulate that maybe Charlie Cox is going to show up in some MCU stuff. I was so excited. And then the way the universe played out for me, I saw No Way Home at a press screening a little bit early. So on the same day, I saw Kingpin show up in Hawkeye and Charlie Cox show up in Spider-Man No Way Home. And it was like, this is happening. They are bringing Daredevil characters into the MCU. And then once No Way Home comes out, they decide to start making more formal announcements and plans. Rumors started circulating. We are getting an actual Daredevil show for Disney Plus. And then rumors were happening. People were hired. And they formally announced it this weekend at Hall H. And here's the one that just cranked up the excitement. It's not 6 episodes. It's not one of these 6 episodes, kind of a movie, but not really, and kind of a TV show, but too short. No, 18 episodes, which is even longer than the Marvel Netflix seasons. So in and of itself, that's kind of wild and crazy that they're going for 18 episodes. Like, it's almost like, is that too long? Are you going the opposite direction? You can stretch this thing out too much? 18 episodes. Other exciting things in here. Daredevil Born Again is the name of one of the great graphic novel runs, comic book runs, story arcs. And so if you need to do some homework like I do, you can buy the Born Again run and play a little bit of catch up to see what they might be planning on doing in this show. All that has me so excited. Couple holdups. This could have been top spot for me. But they didn't bring back the writers showrunners from Netflix. Immediately drops it out of the top spot. They did hire writers from the TV show Covert Affairs, who also wrote the movie Deck the Halls. Daredevil, one of my favorite shows of all time. They're announcing it's coming back on so many levels that should shoot this one easily into the top 3, potential top spot. But I gotta be honest, these showrunners have red flags all over them. These are not people that make me go, yes, awesome, Daredevil. I go, wait, who? And I thought, potentially I needed to drop this one even lower because I'm so concerned about those writers, but I got enough fanboy love in me that I can't, it has to be way up there for me. So number 4, that's the spot that I had to go with it. Also worried about Disneyifying Daredevil. Marvel Netflix was more like light R, hard PG-13, and most MCU is like soft PG-13. So that made me a little bit nervous. I don't want them to Disneyify Daredevil. So a couple things in there. Red flag on the writers, yellow flag on the MCU, or don't mess up my Daredevil. But man, we're getting more. And if they announce the rest of the cast coming back, and man, I will be so excited. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your ranking of all 17 projects announced officially at Hall H this year at San Diego Comic-Con. Or if that's too much for you, which ones are you most excited for and which ones are you not excited for at all? Also, if you enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other MCU content. I did a video breaking down each of these shows, what was officially announced about each of them, and then I've done a ton of rankings talking about every Marvel movie from every single direction you can imagine. You can check that out all right up here when this video is done. In third place is Fantastic Four, and I have to be totally honest, at this point in time on the list, I have 3 projects in the top 3 spots where we don't know the writer and director or the cast of these projects, so their placement is based off ignorance. Others on this list were basically knocked back because we know information and, ooh, that doesn't excite me all that much, which in general is a big concern I have about the next few phases of the MCU, where a lot of the talent they've recruited just doesn't excite me because I look at their resumes and I go, you haven't done things that make me see how you're a good fit for the MCU yet. And I can be totally wrong. I just haven't seen it yet. And so these top 3 benefit from the fact of no one's been announced. So I can't elevate them based off who's been announced, and I can't knock them based off who's been announced. I just look at the projects and I go, that being a part of the MCU, does that excite me based off what it could be? Yes, because it's all theoretical. It's all speculation. And so take all of this with a grain of salt. They could announce the writer and director at D23 in a month or 2, and I'll go, whoo, not good. They could drop like a rock because of that. Based off of ignorance, in third place is Fantastic Four, the original Marvel family, classic Marvel characters that have been translated into live action many times before and always poorly. And this feels like our opportunity to do it right. Kevin Feige has such a great history of adapting characters so well and finding the right new fresh spin on it that when all I'm doing right now is trusting Kevin Feige's track record, I'm excited to see his version of the Fantastic Four, how they join into the MCU. And I've got some thoughts on what I would love to see them do potentially with Fantastic Four. And I've had a thought of if you do it like a 60s period piece and have like Michael Douglas's AntMan and some sequences in it. I'd love to do some stuff like that. And then they get trapped in the quantum realm, pop back up, and the post-credit scene, kind of Captain America, First Avenger-esque, pop back up at the end of it so that they can join in on this Kang Dynasty. I think you could do some really cool stuff like that if you did it as a period piece, change up the formula, be something fresh and original inside the MCU in a decade we haven't really spent time in much in the MCU. So there's a bunch of things I'd love to see. I've thought about making my own little pitch for a Fantastic Four movie, but it's all speculation right now, and it's in third for me. But in first and second, I'll just kind of combine these two together. We've got two Avengers movies coming in 2025, Avengers The Kang Dynasty and Avengers Secret Wars. And since they're both in the same year, they're almost certainly in the same way as Infinity War and Endgame, parts 1 and 2, continuations of one another. We're getting future Avengers films. The track record for Avengers films for me is very good. Age of Ultron is maybe a little bit of a misstep, but still a very enjoyable film. Just has some flaws. And then the other three Avengers films are all top tier MCU for me, in which case they're announcing they're doing two of them in the same year as part of this epic conclusion to the multiverse saga. That sounds very cool. And especially where my frustration with Phase 4 up to this point in time is that it's so scattered, that they're setting up all these different things, the Celestials and gods and street level heroes and young Avengers, and we're doing stuff with Thor still. And there's so many things going on in these new years with Shang-Chi and Miss Marvel. But the thing is that there's all these different things happening because it's all going to pull together at some point in time to something massive, huge, and epic, and that is the 1-2 punch of Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. And Secret Wars in the comics was like the original mega crossover of all of their Marvel brand properties, and with just huge, epic in scope, scale, size. How do you top Endgame? You go Secret Wars, and that's what they're doing. So without knowing a writer-director, it's based off ignorance. It's based off borrowed trust of Kevin Feige's track record with Avengers movies, borrowed trust of the epic skies of Secret Wars, and just the excitement of, man, whenever Kevin Feige starts mashing all of his Marvel toys together, it's a lot of fun. And this is the biggest time of him pulling all of his Marvel toys together and mashing them all together. So for me, the 1-2 punch of Kang Dynasty, Secret Wars, all in one year as the culmination of the multiverse saga. There's so many cool things that can happen in that. There's so many big, massive things that can happen in that. So for me, without knowing a writer and director that could drop this thing, even hike up my anticipation, all sorts of other things can happen once we know who is actually going to make this thing happen. At the moment, based off ignorance, it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, remember I've got more content just like this. You can find out my breakdown of all the announcements that they made right over there. You can find some of my other Marvel rankings right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.